college football playoff is upon us, and there are some things, in fact, there are many things that people have been pointing out that they don't love about it. Now, I think by far the most popular takeaway from folks that have some discontent is they don't like the format, the structure itself. I've got a big problem with it too. So I'm not going to continue to beat this drum because like everyone's pointing it out. The fact that you've got automatic buys for the 4 highest ranked conference champs. That format has flaws. You did not, in my opinion, need to get to last Sunday before you realized that was a flaw. We said it the day the format came out because they tried to sneak it by you and you're like, hold up, wait. The 4 highest ranked conference champs are the only ones that can get a bye. Yeah, what? So if the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country play in a conference title game, the loser of that thing may not even drop out of the top 4 in the rankings, but they can't have a first-round bye. Meanwhile, like the number 16 team in the country, Clemson, could end up winning the ACC, and they're going to get a guaranteed spot in the playoff. They may even have a first-round bye. And if not them, Boise State. Yeah, that's how it's going to work. Okay, well, if that's how it's going to work, the format's going to suck. Well, breaking news, the format sucks. So a lot of people think that. So a lot of people are just running around saying, this is going to change. I'm one of them. I think it's going to change. But it's important to remember why we're here. It wasn't just that all of the conference commissioners got together late one night and said, all right, our format's due tomorrow. Let's just hastily throw something together. That's not the way it happened. It had to happen this way. I mean, you really think Tony Pate or whoever was the commissioner of the Big Ten at the time it was formatted, or Greg Sankey, you really think the commissioners of the 2 most powerful conferences in the country wanted the concept of only conference champs having the first 4 seeds and the automatic buys? Of course they didn't. But we were in a situation where in order to change the contract, in order to get your expanded playoff, in order for everyone to become more rich, and by everyone I don't mean us, I mean them, for everyone to get their ultimate financial way, there had to be concessions. This is no different than watching House of Cards and watching Frank Underwood try to push a bill through Congress. This is the way it works. You have to give so you can take, and in the end, the bill that comes out on the floor looks nothing like what it originated as, but it's a bill that you can get passed. Well, this was the format they could get passed because you had to get sign-off on all of the major conference commissioners. So the SEC had to sign off on it, but so did the AAC. The Big Ten had to sign off on it, but so did the MAC. And the MAC was not going to sit around, and the G5s were not going to sit around and say, oh, sure, we'll expand the playoff with no further parameters or caveats. Absolutely not. We need some guarantees. So the G5 got a guaranteed spot, and the 5 highest-ranked conference champs were going to be in, and the 4 highest-ranked conference champs were going to have buys, and that's what they had to sign off on. So just a little backstory, a little FYI, that's why we are where we are. But now people don't like it, and you shouldn't, because it's not a good format. Although, I admit, they had to do it this way to get to the expanded playoff. Alternative possibility, don't expand the playoff. But I'm not going down that road. I promised you, not going down that road. So Ross Dellinger is doing as good a job as anyone in his space of breaking news. And unlike some in his space, he actually cites people when he reports news that's already been broken. I know it's a revolutionary concept in the world of journalism, but not everyone practices that. Ross does. And he's a friend of the program, so we love Ross. Over on yahoosports.com, I would strongly encourage you to go check out the piece that he has up. So he sat down with Greg Sankey today. They're out in Las Vegas, I think, at the Sports Business Journal Forum. There's like a forum every week for these people. And Ross got with Greg Sankey, and it was the first time publicly that the SEC commissioner has spoken about the playoff. Okay, so Colin, keep this quote up for a second, because I'm going to read it in a second. But to me, the SEC and the Big Ten have had a solution that they wanted all along. They were just waiting for the problem to come along. Well, the problem came along. Now, there are many listening to this who despise the SEC at a cellular level. So what I'm about to say is not to insinuate that you all agree with this. I am speaking from the perspective of SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. When they look at the way the playoff just went down, they think conference title games are losing their value. They're worried about conference schedules chewing up their best teams, i.e. Ole Miss, South Carolina, Alabama, and they're left out. The committee is very uncertain year to year, and they don't know what they're going to get there. Those are problems. They already had the solution. Now, with that in mind, I want you to look at the screen. And if you're listening on podcast, don't worry. Uncle Josh has the book in front of him, so I'm going to read along. Greg Sankey spoke to Ross Dellinger. This is a very important piece. I need you to go to yahoosports.com and read this. Even though I don't work for them, I've plugged their website multiple times. There was a little format that was thrown around in spring. Maybe you recall. It, of course, called for the playoff to expand again, so you can't sneeze a proposal without it including more playoff expansion. But baked into that, do you remember? It was a little while ago. Do you remember there were guaranteed amounts of spots in these new formats for the SEC and the Big 12? There's like 4 guaranteed spots or something like that. And a lot of people were up in arms about that. Because why should you have a guaranteed amount of spots at the table? And they were like, well, because we're bigger and more powerful than you. And you thought whatever you thought about that. Okay. With that concept floating around again, I want you to listen to this paragraph from this Ross Dellinger piece today where he interviewed Greg Sankey. Quote, such a concept, multiple automatic bids for these conferences, may come with a reimagining of conference championship weekend. I don't want to yell, I told you so, so I'm not going to. But those of you who have been around for a while, you know good and well, we told you so. He continues, at the very least, officials have discussed a play-in style conference tournament where winners would punch their bids into the playoff. For instance, if the Big Ten gets 3 automatic bids, perhaps their number 3 and 4 seeds meet in a play-in game. What did I just read? What I read is where this is headed, and where I think those 2 leagues have known it's headed for a while. This little 12-team format that we got such a problem with right now, some of us, it's not of their concern. It's a stopgap. 2026 and beyond, that format's going to look different. I would imagine the playoff will expand again. I'm numb to it. You ask me what I think about it, I'm numb to it. But I will give you some thoughts in a second. But I will tell you what I think's about to happen. Because I've said the same thing for about a year and a half now. This is where this was always headed. If you've been watching the show for a while, that right there, what I just read you, sounds very familiar. Because it was pretty easy to see coming the idea that the conference championship games were going to struggle to maintain their value. But they have to, because the networks have paid a ton of money for them. And so ESPN cannot have the SEC championship game losing its value. CBS or Fox or whoever's carrying the Big Ten championship game that year, they cannot have that game evaporating in their hands when it comes to how valuable it is and how important it is. So the way you do that is you reformat the playoff and you throw your weight around next year to do it, and you get yourself 3 or 4 guaranteed spots in the playoff. Because once you have that, you have everything. So if I'm the SEC, if I know I've got, let's just say it's 3. If I've got 3 guaranteed spots, or call it 4, if I've got 4 guaranteed spots at the table, at that point, I don't have to worry about the committee anymore. I've got to worry about my conference standings. That's all that matters at that point. Greg Sankey went on in that piece, by the way, unironically, to say, hey, if all of the rest of this is subjective, let's just go back to the one thing that's crystal clear, conference standings. Well, the only way they can do that is if they know they got a guaranteed amount of seats at the table. But if you know you got a guaranteed amount of seats at the table, Colin, keep this up here. Then all you have to do is look at the SEC standings. And the way you would figure this out and the way you would reward your teams for having a good year is you take Texas at number 1, they get one of the chairs. They don't have to play another game. Georgia, number 2, they get one of the chairs. They don't have to play another game. You may say to yourself, Josh, aren't they going to go to the SEC championship game? Nope, I'm getting to that. Hold on. Those 2 are already in. Now, Tennessee, South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama are the next 4 highest-ranked SEC teams in this given year. Well, here's what you do with your conference championship weekend. You actually create 2 games instead of 1, but they're not conference championship games anymore. They are play-in games. And so 3 would play 6. Tennessee would face Alabama in one of those. Winner gets the 3rd chair. South Carolina would play Ole Miss. Winner gets the 4th chair. That's how you figure out how your 4 SEC teams are going to be in the dance. Same things happening simultaneously in the Big Ten. So what you've done there is you've actually added inventory for your media partner. You changed what conference championship weekend used to be into what is called play-in weekend, whatever you want to call it. And you crystallized the idea of your conference championship race having maximum meaning and more teams being involved all the way to the finish line. Now, this is going to happen. I promise you this is coming. Either this is coming or something much more radical is coming. That right there is not radical. Based on where we are now, that's commonsensical, that's practical. They won't sign off on anything beneath that moving forward. I hope everyone understands that. So what do I think about it? Well, of course, I don't like it because I don't think anyone should be guaranteed anything at the table. I don't think any conference should be guaranteed anything at the table. If the Big Ten's great, they ought to be able to have 8 teams out of the 12-team field for all I care. If the SEC sucks, they should have 1 or 2 teams. If they're great, they should have 7 or 8 teams. I am for this very, very, very radical idea that is, we should just take the 12 highest-ranked teams at the end of the year and put them in the playoff. I know, right? Ugh, it would never work. It'd never work. It'd never work because the folks that exert control over the sport wouldn't have control over it. That's why it would never work. Well, when I'm college football commissioner, all that's out the window, but I haven't been elected yet. But that is where we're headed, people. Many play-in formats in those major conferences to decide who gets guaranteed spots at the playoff table. If that sounds attractive to you, okay. If you hate it, okay. I'm not advocating for it. I'm just telling you that's probably, scratch that, definitely where we're headed.